Imagine this for a moment. You're sitting at a small kitchen table late at night, maybe with a half-finished drink beside you, and you're staring down at your bank account on your phone. You add the numbers twice just to make sure you didn't miss anything. And the truth hits you again. If anything went wrong tomorrow, if the car refused to start, or the fridge stopped working, or your boss pulled you aside and told you the company was making cuts, your entire world would suddenly feel like it was hanging by a thread. You would feel that tightening in your chest, that familiar fear that comes whenever money becomes the enemy instead of the tool it's supposed to be. Now imagine for just a second that this entire scene could be different. Not because you won the lottery or became a financial genius or suddenly made six figures, but because you managed to save one very specific amount of money. $10,000, a number so simple that most people don't even realize how powerful it really is. But once you reach it, everything in your life begins to shift. Your decisions shift, your confidence shifts, your reaction to stress shifts. Even the way you look at the world changes in ways you don't expect. And today I will show you why this happens, how you will change. I want you to see yourself as someone with $10,000 in the bank, so that once you finish this video, you'll do anything to reach that amount. And later I will also give you some tips on how to reach that figure. So make sure you stay until the end, leave a like, and let's start. To see the difference, you have to start by looking at life before that money exists. Think about all the tiny financial decisions you make every day. Standing in the grocery store comparing cereal prices, trying to decide whether spending an extra dollar is irresponsible, wondering if you can join your friends for dinner or if you'll need another excuse, questioning whether you can afford to put gas in the tank now or if it's smarter to wait until your next paycheck. These may seem like small choices, but when money is tight, each one feels like a landmine you're stepping around. It's exhausting. It wears you down. And even worse, it changes the way your mind works. You start thinking like a person who is surviving, not a person who is planning. You're stuck in defense mode, always trying to keep disaster from finding you. Now imagine that exact same person, but with $10,000 sitting quietly in their savings account. The car making a weird noise no longer feels like a threat to your stability. A medical bill doesn't break you. A job loss becomes something you can manage instead of something that destroys your life. What changes first isn't the money you spend, but the way your brain responds to stress. Science actually backs this up. When people have savings, even modest savings, their cortisol levels drop. They sleep better. They make calmer choices. They stop feeling like they're constantly one step away from falling apart. Suddenly, life doesn't feel like a series of emergencies. But here's the part most people miss. The real impact of saving your first $10,000 isn't about the emergencies themselves. It's not even about the purchases you can now afford. It's about the psychological transformation that happens when you realize you can actually survive something unexpected. This is why hitting that number creates such a dramatic shift. For the first time in your life, you're not reacting to every financial situation from a place of fear. You're able to think about the future rather than just the next paycheck. You become the kind of person who plans, not the kind of person who panics. And that identity shift alone is worth more than the money itself. Oh, and if you want to reach that figure even faster, remember that YouTube is on easy mode now, and it's blowing up every small channel that does things right, as I teach you in my free Telegram community, with the link below. But let's slow down and really look at what changes in your day-to-day life. Take something as simple as waking up in the morning. Before reaching $10,000, you wake up immediately thinking about obligations, bills, debts, deadlines. You think about how many days until your next paycheck and whether it will stretch far enough. But after saving $10,000, you wake up with a different kind of mental quiet. You still have responsibilities, of course, but they're no longer threats, they're just tasks. Even breakfast feels different. You're not calculating the cost of every piece of food you put into your cart. You're thinking about what you actually want to eat. That tiny change might sound insignificant, but it starts a chain reaction. When your mind isn't trapped in survival mode, you think more clearly. You notice opportunities. You take better care of yourself. You're more present with the people around you. And when something goes wrong, which it always does sooner or later, your reaction is completely different. Picture this. You're driving home and your car suddenly jerks and stalls, and the dashboard lights up like a Christmas tree. Before saving $10,000, your heart would drop. You would grip the steering wheel thinking, I can't afford this. I can't handle this. Why now? But with that money saved, the reaction shifts from panic to annoyance. You might groan and shake your head, but you're not spiraling into fear. You call the tow truck, you take the car to the mechanic, and you handle it. You're not happy about the cost, but you're not terrified of it either, and that difference changes everything. Another example. Someone at work mentions they're leaving their job and moving on to something better. Before saving $10,000, you would never even consider doing that. The risk would be too high. But with savings, you start thinking differently. Maybe you should apply for something better. Maybe you should negotiate your salary. Maybe you should finally explore something you've been avoiding because you were afraid of losing stability. That money acts like a cushion that absorbs the fear, allowing you to make decisions based on what you want, not what you're forced to settle for. Now, I want to talk about the part of the transformation that nobody really explains, but everyone who reaches this number feels. It's the way people treat you differently, not because they know you have savings, but because of the way you carry yourself. Confidence is one of the most attractive qualities a person can have, and having money saved gives you a deep, quiet kind of confidence that doesn't need to be shown off. You stand straighter, you speak more clearly, you stop saying yes to things that drain you. You're willing to walk away from situations that don't serve you. And other people can sense that. It might be subtle, but it's powerful. Something else happens too. You start setting boundaries. When you're broke, you often say yes to things you don't want to do because you feel powerless. Maybe you feel dependent on someone. Maybe you feel scared to lose an opportunity. But after saving $10,000, you stop feeling desperate. You know you can stand on your own for a while, and that independence frees you from a lot of unhealthy situations. It frees you from toxic jobs, toxic friendships, toxic habits. It allows you to choose instead of settling. But if we're being honest, the hardest part isn't having the money. The hardest part is becoming the person who can save it. Because saving $10,000 doesn't happen by accident. It requires discipline. It requires awareness. It requires saying no when it's easier to say yes. It requires things like packing lunch instead of eating out, resisting impulse purchases, working a few extra hours, selling things you don't need, rejecting certain invitations, choosing long-term peace over short-term pleasure. And with every small decision you make, you're not just building savings, you're building identity. You become the kind of person who saves. And once you see yourself that way, everything about your behavior starts aligning with that identity. You make better choices automatically. You stop sabotaging your progress. You start protecting your money the same way you'd protect your future. And the interesting thing is that once you reach $5,000 or $6,000, the rest starts to accumulate faster. The momentum takes over. The habit becomes normal. You stop thinking about saving and start thinking about building. You realize you're capable of more than you thought. And before you know it, the number that once felt impossible is staring back at you from your bank screen. And this is where the real transformation begins, because when you finally reach that $10,000 mark, something inside you clicks in a way that's hard to describe until you experience it. You look at that number and suddenly you realize that you are no longer the person you used to be. The anxiety you once felt walking into a grocery store is gone. The fear you used to carry every time you opened your bank app disappears. You start breathing differently, you start thinking differently, and most importantly, you start choosing differently. Your entire relationship with money takes a new shape, almost like the ground underneath your life has finally stopped shaking. The beautiful thing is that the change doesn't come from spending the $10,000. It comes from knowing it's there. Think about how strange that is. The power is not in the money leaving your account. The power is in the money staying right where it is. Having it gives you a sense of control that maybe you've never felt before. You stop imagining worst-case scenarios because you finally have a plan for them. And because of that, you start noticing how much calmer and more focused you become. You're not judging every dollar. You're not trying to guess how the month will end. Instead, your mind starts drifting toward bigger questions, more meaningful questions, like how you want your future to look and what kind of life you want to build and who you want to become over the next years. One of the biggest changes happens when you start thinking about opportunities. Before having savings, opportunities feel like burdens. Someone invites you to a networking event and you say no because it costs $20. A course that could double your income appears online, but the price tag scares you away. A coworker mentions investing or buying equipment for a side project, and you immediately shut down the idea because you can't risk even a small setback. Your mind becomes so focused on not losing money that you forget that money is supposed to help you grow, But after saving $10,000, you suddenly have room to say yes. Not to everything, but to the right things. You can finally invest in your own development without fear. You can take that course. You can pay for that certification. You can buy tools that help you earn more. You can travel to an interview across the country if that's what it takes. You can move to a better neighbourhood without worrying about the security deposit draining you. You can even take a calculated risk in business or investing. You might not do all of those things, but the fact that you could changes the way you move through the world. It shifts you from a person who waits to a person who decides. Here's why I remind to take action with YouTube. Just for you to know, this channel you're watching generates me around $8,000 a month. And in my free Telegram community, there are a lot of people that makes even more, so you can save your first $10,000 much faster. But oh well. Another quiet but powerful shift happens in your relationships. When you're living paycheck to paycheck, you carry a certain heaviness with you everywhere you go. Even if you don't say it out loud, it affects your mood, your patience, your confidence. You might avoid social gatherings because you don't want to spend money. You might feel embarrassed to admit you're struggling. You might even feel resentful when someone else seems financially stable. But when you have $10,000 saved, that heaviness doesn't follow you anymore. You show up to conversations differently. You listen more. You stress less. You don't compare yourself as much. You stop worrying about being judged. You even communicate more clearly because your heart isn't weighed down by financial fear. You also stop letting people treat you poorly. When someone knows you're desperate, they can manipulate that desperation. A boss can underpay you. A partner can pressure you. A family member can guilt you. But when you're stable, you no longer accept those things. You don't beg anyone for opportunities. You don't stay in situations that drain your energy. You don't agree to things out of fear of losing financial support. You finally have the strength to walk away from anything that makes your life smaller instead of bigger. Let's talk about your career, because this is where one of the biggest shifts happens. When you have savings, you interview differently. You're not sitting across the table, acting like you need the job to survive. You're there to evaluate them just as much as they're evaluating you. You negotiate your salary more confidently because you're not afraid of losing the offer. You're willing to ask for better schedules, or remote work, or additional benefits because you have options. People underestimate how powerful that is. Employers can feel the difference. They can sense when someone is confident versus when someone is desperate. And confidence almost always leads to better offers, better pay, and better treatment. Another interesting change is the way you handle decision-making. When you're broke, even small choices feel mentally draining. Should you buy the cheaper detergent or the one that actually works? Should you pay this bill now or wait until the last possible day? Should you take on a second job just to survive? It's a constant cycle of stress, but once you have savings, your decisions become clearer. You're not juggling 10 problems at once, you have mental space. And with that space, you start making smarter, calmer choices automatically. You compare prices because you want to save money, not because you're scared. You plan ahead because you want efficiency, not because you're fighting chaos. You think in months and years, not just days and weeks. One of the biggest surprises for many people is how saving $10,000 changes their sense of identity. Before reaching that number, you might see yourself as someone who struggles with money, someone who is always behind, someone who can't catch a break, someone who makes mistakes or overspends or never seems to get ahead. But once you save that amount, all those labels fade away. You start thinking of yourself as capable, disciplined, responsible, someone who follows through, someone who has control over their life. And when your self-image improves, your actions follow automatically. You find yourself saving more easily. You avoid debt with more intention. You start thinking about long-term goals. You start imagining a future that actually feels possible. You might even notice that you stop chasing instant gratification. When you're broke, small treats feel like the only way to escape stress, so you spend money impulsively. But when you have savings, the pressure is gone. You no longer need those emotional purchases. You feel calmer and more satisfied with your life, and that removed need makes saving even easier. The small highs you once chased with unnecessary spending get replaced with a deeper sense of stability. When you're broke, you might not think about the future, but when you really start thinking about it, you realize that YouTube is the best business to start today. So you will give it a try, and eventually something even more interesting happens. You begin to see money differently. Instead of thinking of it as something that slips through your fingers, you start thinking of it as something that grows. You see every dollar as a tiny worker that you can send out into the world to help you build your future. You become curious about investing. You start running numbers just to see what's possible. You think about 5-year plans, not 5-minute impulses. And because of that, reaching 20,000 or even 50,000 stops feeling impossible. It becomes a clear path, a realistic next step. You've proven to yourself that you can save. Now you begin to learn how to build. It's also worth saying that reaching $10,000 doesn't mean your problems vanish. Life still happens. Emergencies still happen. Bad days still happen. But the difference is that you no longer crumble when something goes wrong. The foundation beneath your life is solid. You can take a hit without breaking. And that resilience becomes part of who you are. It creates a quiet confidence that follows you everywhere you go. So as you look at your own financial situation right now, whether you're starting from zero or from a negative number or from a place where you feel stuck, the message is simple. Saving $10,000 is not just about money, it's about transformation. It's about the strength you build along the way. It's about becoming the version of yourself who no longer fears the next unexpected moment. It's about gaining the freedom to choose instead of being forced. And most importantly, it's about proving to yourself that you are capable of changing your life in a way that feels real and permanent. If you're at the beginning of this journey, start small, start slow, start with whatever amount you can save without breaking your life apart. But start, because little by little, dollar by dollar, decision by decision, the person you become on this path will look back one day and realize that saving those first $10,000 was not just a financial milestone. It was the moment everything in your life began to shift toward a future you didn't even know was possible. I want to leave you with a question. If you've made it this far in the video, it means what I'm explaining to you in my free Telegram community works, right? So join with the link below and let me know if you expected this in the comments. Subscribe to this channel and see you soon. Just a reminder, I'm not a financial advisor. This video is for educational purposes only, and any results depend on your own decisions and actions.